Thank you. Very glad to be here. Interesting, Gary was talking about writers and how for years we've had Christian writers and then secular writers. And it's kind of the way I got involved in this book. A top agent that works with a lot of Christian writers read my bio and called me up, and he said, we want to do this book about Rwanda with the bishop down there who is leading the way in healing this nation. And we've gotten several Christian writers who write Christian books to come down and work with him, and it's not working out. And I said, what's the problem? He said, well, they're not able to deal with the genocide. They keep wanting to skip over the dark stuff, and it's all dark. He said, then we saw your resume, and we saw you wrote a book about Jim Morrison. We saw that you work with teens in trouble, which, by the way, is all of them. We saw you writing a book with David Berkowitz, the son of Sam Killer, and you know, that you're active in ministry, and so we thought, you're the guy. And I said, I'm the guy. And they're like, yeah, you're that guy. And I'm like, all right, I'll be that guy. So I went to Rwanda, beautiful Rwanda, which was really a beautiful country at one time. Well, 13 years ago, during this very time right now, exactly 13 years ago, 1,117,000 innocent men, women, and children were murdered in horrible ways in Rwanda. Most of them killed by machetes, a horrible way to die. The reason we know there was that many is because of the bodies they've found. In fact, when I was there 2 years ago, they found 2,000 more bodies buried in a pit. They keep finding bodies, and the total keeps going up. Now, what happened is that this was an ethnic cleansing, an attempt to wipe out an entire group of people. Ironically, most of the white world, and the Western world particularly, looks at these things and says, oh, well, that's African troubles. But like most African troubles, they seem to have been caused by the white man. In this case, the killing frenzy that happened in Rwanda actually began when the Belgians occupied Rwanda and turned the Tutsis, put the Tutsis as taskmasters over the Hutus, forced the Hutus to build roads to improve the country, and made the Tutsis the taskmasters. And then a hatred developed. These people had lived in peace for 500 years. They're not even tribes. They're not even separate tribes. They speak the same language. They live in the same communities. They have the same customs. But because the white man came in and elevated one group over another and made them make the other group work, hatred arose. Well, when Rwanda got its independence in 1959, the Belgians just left. They didn't deprogram the hatred that they created. And then France came in and assisted the country. Well, this assistance continued into the genocide. And this is another example of politics. Rwanda is what was called a Francophone nation, which means that after its native language, Kinyarwanda, they spoke French. All Francophone nations vote as a bloc in the UN. They all vote together. Whatever France does, the rest of them do. Because of this, when the Hutu government of Rwanda proposed the genocide, France went along with it. Now, not officially, this is revealed a lot in my book. France paid for the machetes. France trained the kill squads. I interviewed prisoners who were trained by French soldiers in how to torture and kill. They did this so they could keep this bloc voting power in the UN, and because they considered this African people dispensable. Well, the question that arises for any Christians, I think, is where was God in Rwanda? Which is actually what the bishop and I wanted to call the book, because that is the central question. And we talk a little bit about that in the introduction. I'll just read a short section from there. Where was God in Rwanda? God was there alongside the victims, laying on the stone-cold floor of the cathedral. He was comforting a dying child. He was crying on the altar. But he was also saving lives. Many were saved by miracles. When evil has taken over an entire nation, God does not flee. He speaks to those who are still listening. He eases the pain of many who are suffering, and he saves those who can be saved. Man has free will, and God will not override it. Sometimes evil has its day because men have so turned themselves over to it that God can no longer reach them. But even then, God does not abandon. God waits with us to perform a miracle in our inner lives. Many of the people in Rwanda were killed in churches. The government knew that in the past, during past persecutions, the people would flee to the churches for safety. And this happened in Rwanda. And they went to the churches in advance, to the pastors and the priests, and they said, when the people come, let them in. And then tell us, and we'll come and kill them. And they did. There are stories of Hutu pastors bulldozing their own churches on top of thousands of people inside. Nuns dumping gasoline on church buildings, setting fire to the people inside. I went to one church where 5,000 people were killed in the church. There are softball-sized bloodstains on the walls where children's heads were smashed against the walls. How does people like this find faith again? They find faith because it's taken away from the idea of churchianity and put back into the idea of spiritual. God was in Rwanda. God is in Rwanda today. Bishop John has programs that he has started. He returned after the genocide and began rebuilding. There are national programs in this country, national salvation programs, national forgiveness programs. I worked with some people who were building a house for this woman. They were prisoners about to be released who had gone through the salvation program and healing. She had gone through forgiveness and healing programs. They were the actual men who had come to her village, killed her family, and burned her house. And now they're there rebuilding her house, and she's helping them. This doesn't happen anywhere in the world, but it's happening in Rwanda. The foreword to my book was written by Rick Warren, who wrote Purpose Driven Life, who's active over in Rwanda now as part of this, because it is such a spiritual phenomena that is occurring. People all over the world are attracted to it. What do you do in a country where 1/3 of the population participated in some way in murder and killed 1/6 of the population? You have to have programs that deal with forgiveness, that deal with overcoming this hatred. And they are doing that. Rwanda is now creating a model to heal the hatred in the world. Thanks.